Hi everybody. You will be glad to know that the level of technology on this channel is improving slowly, I know. So I did the broadcast with the charts for various epidemics in history. I was really disappointed when I watched it back because the sound was cutting out at crucial points, and I did promise you all that I would make the charts available for you all to look at. So I thought, let's go through them together. So what's going to roll up on the screen here are different charts, and we will discuss basically what I discussed, but with reference to some visuals. So first of all, it's important to look at some definitions. For example, epidemic is symbolized in astrology by the planets Mars, Pluto, also the 12th house, and Pisces, which I see is spelled wrong. Pneumonia is symbolized by Mercury and Gemini. Influenza by Neptune, Uranus. Death, you see there, 8th house of course, Pluto and Scorpio, and also Mars, Saturn. Infection rates, Mars, Pluto. Obviously Mars also represents fever. Manner of death is the 4th house. Death by disease is Saturn, so we're looking for Saturn influencing the 4th house as well. Quarantine, Saturn, so I'll be looking for Saturn in the 1st house. Virus is denoted by Pluto, and what I found very interesting was the sign of Taurus kept coming up in these charts. Now, because I'm going to be looking at Aries ingress charts, it's not unusual to find Taurus placements because, as you know, Mercury is quite strongly tied to the Sun. It can only be in the sign before or after. Similarly, Venus can either be 2 signs before the Sun or 2 signs after, or the same sign, or 1 before and 1 after, right? So it's not that surprising. However, I was finding the degrees between sort of around 15 degrees of Taurus were represented, and on that degree of Taurus is the fixed star Menka. Now look what Menka represents: disease, disgrace, ruin, ill fortune, illness, worries, survival of the fittest, diseases of the throat, inflammation and suffocation. Unfortunately, that encaptures everything about this dreadful virus. I mean, obviously ruin, because look at the stock markets, the ill fortune, survival of the fitness, everyone being worried, and suffocation because people are struggling to get air in their lungs, actually struggling to breathe. Also something that comes up is Algol. This is the most unfortunate of the fixed stars. It's at 26 degrees of Taurus. As I say there, most unfortunate also represents violence. So I've put all those there because those are the sort of symbolic factors we're going to be looking at when we do the charts. So the very first chart we have here is from a website called the Classic Astrologer. If you look up bubonic plague in the Classic Astrologer, you'll find this. Now, what they're showing in this chart, I'll just give you the dates. It was from the Byzantine period. He reported the epidemic in AD 541 from the port of Pelusium near Suez in Egypt. No specific date, but it's the Aries ingress for that year. So they went on to talk about, on the Classic Astrologer, that the symptoms of the plague being kind of, the mucus, the pneumonia, fever and all that. He talks about the importance, you can see there in yellow, I've highlighted that it's Scorpio rising, Saturn rising in Scorpio. Saturn is a malefic planet placed in a malefic sign of Scorpio, right there conjunct the ascendant. Saturn is ruled by Mars, which is another malefic, and there you see in the turquoise, Mars is in the 8th house of death, and it's conjunct the South Node. Now, South Node is known as being a very unlucky point, and as you see there, Mars encapsulates things about epidemic, fever. There it is in the house of death. You can see in the magenta highlighted we have Venus at 5 degrees of Taurus, and at that point back in AD 541, Algol, the fixed star Algol, was at 5 degrees of Taurus. So you have there Venus in Taurus. I told you to keep in mind Taurus conjunct Algol, the most unfortunate fixed star. Although Venus is in her domicile of Taurus, that is a very unfortunate position. He goes on to say that, we've done the fixed. Venus is also the ruler of the unfortunate 12th house, which is important because ruler of the 12th house is kind of slightly in its detriment. Mercury is in its fall. You can see there Mercury in the green in Pisces is in its fall, and it also is a dispositor of Mars because Mars is in Gemini, so Mercury rules Mars. Moon is in the 8th house, and the moon receives no beneficial aspects. It's in Gemini. As I say, Gemini ruling the 8th house. Gemini is linked to influenza, so it kind of flows that Gemini ruling the 8th house of death by influenza. You can see also that the 4th house is ruled by Virgo, also Mercury sign, so manner of death linked to Mercury, the lungs. Okay, the ascendant, of course, is ruled by Mars or Pluto in a malefic sign, conjunct Saturn. Saturn on the ascendant also sort of indicates quarantine. So there you go, you have quite a few negative symbols in that chart. So let's now have a look at the next chart, which is, this is the Aries Ingress chart for London 2019, as you can see there. Just like the bubonic plague, we have Scorpio rising. So again, we're alerted here that this is a tumultuous year, important things happening. Let's see where the ruler Mars is. Well, the ruler Mars, as you can see in the turquoise, is in Taurus, and it's on 23 degrees, which is conjunct Algol, the most unfortunate fixed star. So the ruler, because we're taking the traditional ruler of Scorpio, Mars, in Taurus. I said look out for Taurus, and it's conjunct Algol. That is immediately a very bad sign. You can see there as well in the light blue, Saturn is conjunct Pluto, and they are on the south node. Again, a very negative, unlucky, the south node. Pluto being the co-ruler on the south node as well. The ascendant is really important because the ascendant has a lot to do with health and well-being. You can see in the red, the IC is ruled by Aquarius, a ruler being Saturn. Saturn is death by disease. 4th is manner of death. So again, you have that theme of death stemming from disease. What I was very interested in the chart, you see it in the magenta, is Sun conjunct Chiron. Sun being on the 0 degrees of Aries, because it's an Aries ingress. When I looked at that was what alerted me to the fact that maybe Sun-Chiron conjunctions are to do with pandemics. I looked back and I saw this was prevalent during the Spanish flu, whose chart we'll look at again, and also due to the pandemic of 1968, which started in America. So it seems the Sun-Chiron indicates definitely pandemics. During the Spanish flu, Chiron was approaching the Sun. It was in the latter degrees of Pisces. The following year, because the Spanish flu went on for about 3 years, so it started in 1917. The following year, Sun was conjunct Chiron. The following year, they were separating, so that's why it kind of lasted 3 years. I think this one will last a maximum of 2 years, so we're going to the end of 2019 and most of 2020, but then they will start to separate by 2021, which I think you can see, it will probably start ending. So let's see. You also see Mars, the ruler of this planet, it's in the turquoise there in Taurus, is square Venus, which is in the red, and Venus rules the 12th house of death. Pluto is of course on the south node. Gemini is on the 8th, you can see it there in green, representing 8th house, representing death, Gemini representing influenza. Mars actually rules the Sun, because the Sun is in Aries, and Mars rules the 6th house. You can see there it's also in turquoise, the ruler of the 6th house. So quite a few links there that are important. Right, let's go to the following chart. This time we're looking at the Aries ingress for Wuhan in 2019. You can see that there's where I've done that sort of green highlight, lots of first house planets. I'm finding that we will find that more and more in these charts, a predominance of first house planets. First house represents the body, how we live our lives, new beginnings. It represents our whole approach to life. So a lot of planets there show that basic activities, basic health, our basic approach to life, this whole social distancing, very much affected. You see there in the turquoise that Neptune is rising in Pisces, conjunct Mercury in Pisces. Neptune also has a lot to do with influenza, with pandemics, Mercury, the chest. So there's that theme going on the ascendant. Plus the mystery, because all of us have our theories. No one really knows what's going on in Wuhan now and when this broke out. It's all shrouded in mystery. The whole China situation really is. We don't know how bad it is, if it really is improving, if that's too good to be true. And there you go. You see the whole mystery surrounding what actually is going on now, and what happened in Wuhan is encapsulated by this Neptune, which creates all this confusion, this fog, this misinformation. Neptune conjunct Mercury is also all about misinformation, isn't it, or disinformation. In the magenta, you see in the first house Sun conjunct Chiron, which I think is a key